Hello and good morning, good afternoon and evening to all of you. My name is Omar and I am the Deputy Secretary General of Ayala. I welcome you to this second seminar in the Ayala series of webinars on topics of interest to Ayala members and everyone involved in AtoN navigation, including Vessel Traffic Services, VTS. Today's seminar is split into two parts to accommodate the different time zones of the world. The first part is being held in the early hours of European time zone, which is late afternoon in Asia, Australia, and the Pacific. The second part of this webinar will be held at 1600 UTC, which will be early in the day for the Americas, late in the afternoon for Europe. I want to remind you to keep your cameras off and your microphone muted during the presentations to conserve bandwidth and so that we can hear what the presenters have to say without interruption. During the presentations, I would like to ask you to write your questions in the chat box of the system, and we will attend to these in the question and answer session after each presentation. You can also raise your virtual hand during the Q&A session itself if you want to take the floor. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the Ayala YouTube channel for everyone to see. The theme of this webinar is, of course, the COVID-19 epidemic, and in particular, how our members have been able to cope with the situation with limitations on the movement of workforce, as well as considerable challenges in the supply chain. The webinar has 3 presentations, 2 of which will be delivered now, and the last one in our second session at 1600 UTC. These presentations provide us with some insight from the perspective of an industrial member, a VTS competent authority, as well as an AtoN navigation competent authority. The first 2 presentations will be delivered by Mr. Chris Proctor, the CEO of Sealight, who are one of our industrial members in Australia, and Mr. Liu Wei, the Chief Manager of Wusong VTS Center in Shanghai, China, which is a part of China MSA, who are a national member of Ayala. So we will start with Mr. Chris Proctor with a presentation from an industrial member's perspective on managing the continuity of AtoN navigation production during this COVID-19 pandemic. So Chris, could you take the floor, please?
Thanks, Omar. Thank you for the introduction. And thanks for hosting. Thank you, Ayala, for hosting this event. This is much appreciated and asking me to present. Let me just share my screen. Okay, has that come up well?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay. So this is somewhat predated in that Australia is fortunately coming out of the back end of this pandemic. So I certainly want to recognise and give our appreciation to our European and UK and US colleagues and the journey that they're going through. Now let's look at what it looked like from an Australian perspective. So our first cases were confirmed or identified on the 25th of January 2020. The Australian Formula One Grand Prix, for those who follow it, was actually cancelled 1 hour before the event was due to start on the 15th of March 2020. All Australian borders were closed to non-residents on the 20th of March, and state governments started to close non-essential services on the 21st of March. I must say it's been a really challenging time. The second wave of infections emerged in Victoria during May to June. We've gone through and come out the other side of our second And that's resulted in 110 days of stage 3 and stage 4 lockdown. It's been quite phenomenal. The state has only just opened up on Tuesday of this week, and we had closed for basically all non-essential businesses. So that includes restaurants, hospitality, a lot of manufacturing, a lot of construction. These industries were basically put on a pilot light and suspended while the virus was attempted to be controlled. So very, very challenging times. Now, what did we do? Our first response, the first thing we did very early in the piece, and this was through that February-March period, is we established a daily COVID-19 working group, and this was really, really effective. First, we wanted to assess the situation. You can imagine, and you think back to February and March, the confusion and the amount of information or the lack thereof that was circulating in the environment. So we wanted to assess the situation, identify business risk, and certainly identify mitigation strategies, and then set actions and prioritise execution. And then, of course, keep the channels of communication open to our stakeholders. So we communicated daily. We communicated daily within the business. We had a daily newsletter going out, and we were hard at work trying to set things in place as the environment changed so quickly. And this was really important to set the cadence and the frequency of basically project execution. We covered a huge amount of ground in a very short period of time. Two key risks that we identified really fall into these buckets of health and safety of employees, and that's our first priority. And then second, of course, is business continuity, and this was the theme of our thinking throughout this whole period. I won't spend too much detail talking through our basic response, because a lot of this is common. A lot of this, everybody did, but it talks to the ban on non-essential international travel, which we implemented very early, ban on non-essential domestic travel, which we also implemented very early. We restricted visitors to our sites, and we did that in a harder manner through our stage 3 and our stage 4 lockdowns just recently. In fact, we closed access, we closed gates, we put signage up. We even closed our main gate and listed telephone numbers on the gate so that we could control that ingress and egress of couriers and transportation, so that we could make sure they had the right site documentation and the right PPE in place. We eliminated common touch points, and by common touch points I mean a time clock, for instance. You can think of a manufacturing floor where production staff punch in and punch out, and we have fingerprint scanners for that purpose. So one of the first things we did is we stopped the time clocks, and we just had a trust system where people came to work and they left, but we didn't want the congestion of these time clocks, and we also didn't want people using these common areas or common touch points. Another example is just coffee. We replaced jars of communal coffee with single satchel serves. We rostered shift work, and we did this in the Australian site and the US site, where we physically cut our manufacturing labour in half, and we ran a day shift and an afternoon shift. We did this for two reasons. One, to limit the amount of congestion in the building at any one point in time, and that's congestion in the manufacturing area, as well as congestion around lunchrooms and facilities. But we also did it for redundancy, and we continue to do this in certain areas of the business. If we have a chain of transmission, or if we have a positive case, we didn't want to lose the entire workforce, and that's a way that we've maintained this, this operational status in splitting out these rosters and this shift work. PPE, of course, and supplies, a full-time contract cleaner, and then Perspex safety screens. That's really, common stuff. A lot of people are doing that. What I did want to focus on in this presentation is some of the specific measures that we have done, which might be unique in the industry, and it might be some learnings or some takeout that other people in this audience might take away and want to implement in their own businesses or organisations. This included the establishment of safe zones, a special leave policy, contact tracing within the building, support, of course, of working from home personnel, managing offsite hazards, and then finally our COVID safe plan. I'll start with the establishment of our safe zones. What we wanted to achieve, and what we did achieve in this area of work, was to isolate work areas in the manufacturing facility. So basically we wanted to restrict movement across the facility and most certainly limit contact points. So what does that mean? It really means that if you're working in one area of the business You're expected to stay in that area of the business, use the lunchroom and the toilet facilities in that area, and not cross to other areas of the building. What this does, and it continues to do so, we've got this policy in place as we speak, provides redundancy if there is a confirmed case. So we don't lose the entire site. It's only one area of the site that may have to be quarantined. And the second thing it does is it limits the chains of transmission. If we've got less people moving throughout the entire facility, we've got less chain of transmission. So what does that look like practically speaking? Well, this is our general production floor. So we would say in this area, our production workforce have to use these toilets, this lunchroom, and really cannot leave. We have runners. So each area nominates a runner who actually wears a different colour high visibility shirt, and they have permission to move from area to area to transfer product, to communicate, just those general requirements of the movement, but we restrict that to a certain number of people. We then have a tool room where we do our CNC, high precision machining and other types of fabrication. They're isolated or quarantined to that area. Our rotational moulding and our foaming area, that team is isolated to those parts of the building. And then of course the office staff. Now the office staff became a moot point as we shifted people to a work from home environment, but the purpose here is that the office again stays in the office and uses the lunchroom facilities and uses the restroom facilities. And that's actually worked really, really well. We also implemented a special leave policy, and this is something that we did very, very early, I would say as early as March, April. So what is our special leave policy? It was 2 weeks, or it is 2 weeks extraordinary leave entitlement that's not deducted from an employee's leave balance, and that includes casual staff. So in Australia, casual labour generally do not accrue leave. They don't accrue annual leave, etc., or long service leave. But we wanted this entitlement available to all people that were working in the building. Why? We wanted to prevent the risk of workplace transmission and encourage employees to isolate when required. So the purpose of this was if an employee did not have a sufficient leave balance or was just reluctant to use it, we still wanted them to go and get tested if they developed symptoms. We still wanted them to isolate and quarantine if a family member had symptoms and had to be tested. So that for that purpose, we thought a special leave entitlement would encourage it, because there was no longer a disincentive to do it because it wasn't drawing down on their leave balance. And we also thought it was fair. If we're directing a staff member into isolation, maybe above and beyond what the government requires, or if we're closing a facility or directed to close a facility and a staff member doesn't have enough leave as a balance, well, we thought, well, it's fair if we can just do something to help out. So some examples of an application of our special leave policy. If a staff member has been in contact with someone who is confirmed as COVID-19, if they've been in close contact of somebody who's suspected, if a member of their immediate household is being tested, if they have to care for a member of their immediate family who is confirmed to have COVID-19, if they have a suspected case and are awaiting results, if they test positive, and they need to quarantine until they test negative, or if we direct them to remain away from work under either government requirements or our own requirements, or finally, if we were directed to close. So they're all the examples of applications where our special leave policy would apply. And that's been a real success, particularly in the early days of this pandemic when the testing took so long to turn around. We've gone from 1 week to have tests turned around and confirm a positive or negative to now shorter than a 24-hour period. So certainly in those early days, this was really, really important. Contact tracing. We started contact tracing in the building very, very early. So what does this look like? It's as simple as a single page form that every staff member completes after every shift or every day. And they simply write their name, their department, their supervisor, the date and time, and who they've interacted with. And this allows us to contact trace if somebody is tested positive and are put into isolation. So it's really, really important that we can have these measures in place and quickly clamp down on any outbreak in the building. The next area I was going to talk to is just the support for working from home employees. In March 2020, so March this year, the government, our Victorian government, put out guidance that if you can work from home, you must work from home, and this hasn't changed. So we've got a lot of team members who have been working from home since March, and that comes with all sorts of challenges, both personal challenges from a staff member's perspective, to productivity and business challenges from our perspective. So this is a really, really important area for us to be able to give some support. So some of the considerations, certainly health and safety. In Australia, when an employee works from home, both the employer and the employee still have the responsibility to maintain a safe workplace. So we have to ensure that their home office is a safe workplace to the extent that they would have been working in one of our facilities, as far as it's reasonably practical. So what does that mean? Physical space considerations. We've got to be aware of power cords and equipment and trip hazards and all those things that you would consider in an office environment, but maybe not consider at home. Ergonomic considerations, seating and size, height of screens and keyboards and so forth. Also recognising the limitations of home offices. So when you think working from home, you immediately think a home office, but that's not the case, because in most of these environments, it's both partners, the husband and wife, working from home, plus potentially homeschooling. So in most cases, our work from home environment is the end of a kitchen table or the end of a bench, not so much the home office, which is generally occupied by somebody else. So there's a lot of ergonomic considerations to take into consideration. Mental health is a really big one. And again, I stress that we've got a lot of team members that have been working from home since March. So balancing that pandemic stress, the isolation, as we've come out of stage 4, Victoria residents have not been able to travel outside of a 5-kilometre radius from their home. We've only been able to exercise for 1 hour a day. And these types of restrictions have been in place for over 100 days. So the mental health of our workforce is something that we've really, really got to be mindful of and consider. Add on top of that work stress, add on top of that homeschooling stress, and it's really, really challenging. Other considerations from a business perspective, certainly managing working from home and supervisor training. So I've done it before. I didn't enjoy it. I find it far less productive. And at the other end of the spectrum, you can work many, many more hours. So managing your own work from home setting actually controls the type of work you do, the hours you do, physically closing off at the end of the day and not having it creep right into the evening. So there's that personal management, and then there's the supervisor training. And we put in place some training mechanisms of, okay, we now have supervisors with a remote workforce. How do we ensure they're as productive, as practical as possible in this whole new operating environment? So we put some supervisor training in place to make sure that people could understand their roles and some of the expectations that go along with it. Certainly the provision of equipment. I remember the day quite clearly in March, April, when we literally had office members en masse walking out into the car park carrying their desktop PCs and carrying their screens, physically taking the hardware from the office into their car and driving home. And certainly the provision of equipment and trying to secure desks and furniture. And we had people coming back to the building just to take their own chairs because they were more comfortable than what they had at home. That's been a challenge. And then one of the things that is generally not considered is this idea of data security, internet crime, and confidentiality. So we can control confidential documents and the security of data within a building, but when we have team members working from home with access to sensitive equipment or sensitive data, payroll information and personal information and so forth, that has to be handled with the same duty of care as though they're operating from the office. Internet crime spiked, as everybody I think knows, during the pandemic. As we've got a disassociated or a dislocated workplace, it makes people vulnerable for phishing attempts and hacking attacks and all sorts of internet crime. So the incident of internet crime certainly went up. So our level of awareness and training and acknowledgement has to match that. So some of the practical steps that we did, certainly a workplace checklist. So every staff member who's gone to work from home has to complete a health and safety checklist, from the ergonomics to their setup to the workstation setup, all of those things. That's a requirement that has to be completed and then sent back to their department manager. If there's any issues that are presented, our health and safety coordinator can get involved to make sure that some of these risks are mitigated. Simple as frequent check-ins. That's one of the practical steps that we've put into support. So not from a manager's perspective, but somebody else just checking in with that staff member to make sure that they're okay and there's no challenges that they're, immediate challenges that they're meeting or need to overcome, and just keeping those lines of communication open. Other area of staying connected is a platform called Yammer. So we use an internal social network. So we set up this page or this stream called Surviving COVID-19, and every staff member's got access to it. And here we just posted, fun events and things that were going on during the last 9 months. People have had babies, people have had major milestones and big birthdays and things like that. So we just wanted to keep the communication open and that Sealight or that business environment still sound with those relationships. So that's been a good tool to try and keep people connected. Care packages, we sent a whole bunch of care packages out to team members, which is simple as a mug and a bag of sweets and a Sealight branded face mask, just so that they know we still care. We've run some MS Teams calls of a Friday, so we would have an all-staff update on sort of a 4:30 p.m. or whatever it might be on a Friday afternoon, and then carry over for drinks, where we will literally have a beer over Zoom and still try to keep that social engagement with the team. And then we also have access to our employee assistance program. This wasn't new. We've had for quite a number of years now a relationship with a firm called Positive Psychology in a nearby suburb. This is a counselling and a psychology service to Sealight staff members. So if people are finding challenges either in their work life or personal life, we have complimentary sessions that we support with Positive Psychology. So it's not new, but it was just shining a bit of a spotlight that this service is available. And if anybody just needs a little bit of extra support or a bit of help, it's there. So there's some of the practical steps that we put in place to try and overcome some of these issues that have arisen with employees working from home. But I must just say our team's done a wonderful job. I really feel I only lived it for 3 or 4 days, but I really feel for the team members who have spent many, many months now working from home in that environment, and I look forward to welcoming them back to the office. Managing offsite hazards. This is a big one. This is the recognition and management that COVID-19 exposure is actually a site hazard. And so what we've put in place is an element of our site risk assessment that's dedicated to COVID. So we just treat COVID as a risk that needs to, or as a hazard that needs to be identified, and control measures need to be put in place to mitigate that. So that might be working in an enclosed space with a client. It might be vehicle requirement or vehicle usage and congestion and PPE access at site. So this now sits in our health and safety risk assessment record as part of everything else that we would assess with site work. And in this situation, it's not only active site work for a customer, it might be onshore or offshore, but it's as simple as visiting a supplier. We still expect a COVID risk assessment to be put in place if somebody is doing work at a supplier site. And then finally, just to close off on our COVID safe plan. So this is an expectation that was put in by the Victorian government on the 13th of September. And as part of our business reopening, it became mandatory for every Victorian business to have a COVID safe plan. And that's got to demonstrate our actions to help prevent the introduction of COVID-19 to the workplace. It's got to talk to the type of face masks or PPE that are required in the workplace, and then how we would prepare for and respond to a suspected or confirmed case, and then how we'll meet all the requirements set out by the Victorian government. So this is a legal document that every Victorian has to maintain to open. It's signed off by the CEO. We asked for a copy of that document. If we have contractors on site, we want to cite their COVID safe plan. Likewise, if we go to their site. So this is an active, living, breathing document that sits inside the business. I'm really pleased to say that it took no more effort than just completing the fields after all the work we had done. So it was really pleasing to sit with the COVID team at the end of that big journey to be presented with a COVID safe plan template by the government and really know that we're already doing all of that. That was quite pleasing because it gave us the feeling that we'd addressed it, to the best of our ability. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your time. And again, I'd just like to reflect on our colleagues in the US and the UK and Europe and the challenges that they're experiencing. And I wish you all well.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. Excellent presentation, and personally, I'm a bit blown away by everything you have done. It's very impressive in my opinion. I haven't received many questions, practically none on the chat. So I will. There's one. Let me see. Yes, there's a question on what now after the pandemic. How will this do something to your company, to your organization, how you conduct business? Any thoughts on that, Chris?
Oh,
after the pandemic?
I don't know. Are we thinking that far ahead, Omar? When's the vaccine coming? Do you have a date before election day? Oh look, I don't know. When we budgeted, so we set out our strategic planning in March. Our financial year runs from July 1st to June 30th. So we set out our strategic planning in March. And of course, our strategic planning is COVID. What is going to be the impact of COVID on our business, on our workforce, on our customers, on the marketplace? And we haven't seen a lot of change, fortunately. We've done our best and continue to do our best to stay open. And the business in the US has got its different challenges. The UK have its different challenges as they work through this pandemic. But in terms of the general marketplace and what's next, look, I hope it's business as usual. And when you look at economic stimulus and recovery, these recoveries are generally trade-led. It's trade and it's infrastructure and it's goods and services that pull us out of these types of situations. And as a maritime business, that's the industry that we support. So we hope that we can continue as business as usual.
Yeah, for many industries, the challenge has been to survive, to not to just go bankrupt in this time and age with business going away. But then we are a bit fortunate in our business that AtoN Navigation has to be supplied still.
Yeah, we're incredibly fortunate.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? I will open the floor if somebody has a question from the floor. No? Well, feel free to contact us afterwards if you come to think of a question or two. I'm sure that Chris will be willing to exchange views with you after the fact as well. So, yeah, thank you very much, Chris, and good luck with the whatever comes after. Hopefully it will be fantastic. And you have done very well during this crisis. It's quite evident. Now, moving on to the second presentation of this first part of the webinar, which will be delivered by Mr. Liu Wei, who has been working in VTS operations and management for the last 12 years, and is now Chief Manager of Wusong VTS Center in Shanghai, China. Liu Wei, could you please take the floor now? Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Arma. Thank you.
Yes. You're muted, my friend. I think you're muted. You must unmute. There you are. We can see your face.
Okay, wait a moment.
And you have to select the correct screen to share.
Yes, I try to, but the computer.
There you are. I can see your desktop now. And now the presentation. There we are. We can see the presentation.
Okay, may I start?
Yeah, you can put it in presentation. There you are. Now we're seeing the presentation. Yes, go ahead now, Liu.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Liu from Shanghai MSA. Today, I'm glad to have this opportunity to share my opinion with you. And before the presentation, I would like to express my appreciation to the ILA Secretary for giving me this valuable opportunity, and also express my great thanks to all of you for taking time to attend this presentation. On COVID-19 pandemic, the biggest black swan incident in 2020 has made a severe impact on the global economy and social order. The shipping industry, as a barometer of global economy, also suffered a big shock. For example, cruise tourism has been hit hard because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The living space on the ship is closed and small, and shipping ships sailing among various ports around the world. It is inevitable to have some direct or indirect contact with local people. Therefore, ships have the potential risks of carrying and spreading COVID-19. If a crew member on board is infected with the virus or has suspected symptoms, it may affect the ship and crew in the following aspects. First is the crew will be unable to perform their duties normally, which will affect the ship's operation, order, and navigation safety. Second, the implementation of symptom monitoring or medical isolation will increase the workload and pressure of other crew members. Number three, small and closed living space of ship will increase the psychological pressure of the crew. Fourth, emergency rescue is complex. As we know, the medical resources provided by the ships are not enough to deal with public emergencies on ships, which requires the support of the shore-based forces such as customers, MSC, medical institutions, CDC, port management agencies, and specialized rescue agencies. Fifth, sometimes it is hard to find which department is responsible for coping with COVID-19 on board, especially when the ship owners, port of registry, and port are not in the same country. Even if the crew members keep healthy, they cannot land in port as before. And the shift change of crews is also greatly affected. Working on ship for a long time also caused great psychological and physiological fatigue to the crew members, and even affects the navigational safety of the ship. For example, on the evening of April 9th, a container vessel aground on its way from Ho Chi Minh Port to Ningbo Port. The deck officer and the AB sailor on duty had served for more than 12 months. The difficult situation of crews has also received a lot of attention. Many international organizations, including IMO, IHO, have also released a number of instruments or working documents. On this background, today I mainly want to clarify 3 questions. First of all, what role does VTS play in response to COVID-19 pandemic? Obviously, VTS is not the department directly responsible for COVID-19 on board. In China, customers and local health authorities are the main department dealing with the pandemic. While on the other hand, as VTS, can we say it's not our business? Of course, the answer is no. So where is our position in coping with the pandemic on board? In my opinion, VTS should be based on its own advantages and characteristics. We should and also could play an important role in this worldwide crisis. The first rule is a bond between ship and shore. VTS can take advantage of its communication facilities to collect ship and crew information and implement point-to-point and point-to-range information services and information broadcasters. VTS can provide convenience when ships need shore-based professional guidance. The second rule is an organizer of shipping traffic. As the main body of vessel traffic service, VTS has obvious advantages in vessel dynamic supervision and traffic organization. It can provide advice for port health and epidemic prevention department and arrange berths or anchor area for the affected ship. After the position of VTS is clarified, the second question is how does the VTS work in response to COVID-19 pandemic? Facing the pandemic, VTS is mainly focuses on 2 aspects: information processing and management, monitoring and management of infected ships. For information processing, there are 4 steps, including collection, evaluation, transmission, and provision of information. They constitute a closed loop to ensure the information could be correct and without delay. All in all, I think VTS should fully play the role of information center in the entire port operation. The first step, information collection, VTS shares strengths communication with the port health department, on port management department, agents, and other relevant parties, so as to obtain the latest port requirements on ship against the COVID-19 in time. At the same time, VTS also need to obtain relevant information of ships in VTS area through VTS report or information services, including in detail 6 kinds of information, such as the ship's name, call sign, the ship owner or local agent, and contact information. Also include the number of persons on board suspected or confirmed, on a list of port of call, list of crew members, number of crew and passengers. Number 5 is required shore-based support, such as the pilot tug, and also including some other any possible information. After the information was collected, the next step is evaluation. It's including if the information is correct or timely, and VTS should make preliminary judgment and also keep in touch with relevant department and ships. The third step is information transmission. VTS should timely remind the ship to take necessary prevention and control measures after receiving a report of suspected or confirmed infection by the ship, and at the same time pass relevant information to the port, healthy and epidemic prevention department, or other port management department. Thirdly, VTS can facilitate the communication at the request of both ship and shore. The final step is information provision in accordance with the requirements of the Healthy and the Epidemic Prevention Department, or CDC, the work guidance and requirements of relevant international organizations, industry associations, port states, and coast states. VTS can provide ships with the following information. For example, the personal protection advice on requirements of port or coastal states for reporting and responding to infected ship, and also include instructions for emergency operation after ship having suspected cases. Also have the quarantine requirements for confirmed, suspected, and close contactors. Advice on remote medical services and crew mental health adjustment, and also contact information of some departments. Secondly, VTS should focus on monitoring and management of infected ships. There are many three tasks. The number one is to make a setting plan for the ship. Number two is monitor the ship traffic and response to the navigational risks to ensure the safety of the infected ships. Number three is to provide assistance in the treatment of suspected or confirmed cases. Firstly, let's figure out the setting plan. It's according to the traffic condition and the needs of pandemic prevention and control. VTS can provide infected ships with information related to navigation safety, and also can provide assistance in the development of VTS setting plan in VTS area, and also VTS could designate anchorage area or temporary berth locations for the infected ships. VTS shall track, monitor the dynamics of infected ships and response to possible navigation risks in time, including the timely react to the situation when other ships are found approaching infected ships, because we will establish a ship domain, the safety area for the infected ships. And the last task for VTS is provide assistance in the treatment. We could assist Port Healthy Department of CDC to search for close contactors. For example, the pilot and the port handling personnel, and so on, including agent. And we also can provide supporting measures when crew members cannot perform their duties normally. And the final question is, what suggestions are highlighted? Taking this opportunity, I would like to make a few specific suggestions. The first is, if crew members are injured or in other health emergency, VTS shall protect the crew's right to receive medical assistance in accordance with the requirements of relevant international convention. The shipping company or ship's owner request the VTS to assist the institution to provide remote medical services to the ship, and the VTS should take advantage of its role in communication to provide assistance. The second suggestion is that after a vessel with suspected or confirmed, once is engaged in a traffic accident, VTS need to provide support for the effective emergency handling and search and rescue. The third suggestion is that considering the characteristic of passenger ships, especially large cruiser ships, it is recommended that VTS authority may develop an emergency plan or cooperate with other departments, work together to develop such kind of emergency plan, like COVID-19 emergency response plan for passenger ships. The fourth suggestion is that the VTS authority should pay attention to the impacts of infected ship on navigation safety and port operation efficiency, both safety and efficiency, and also work with relevant department to facilitate crew changes, cargo clearance, and other port services. The last suggestion is that it is suggested that the committee may considering that involve the guidelines, a new guideline for VTS response to public health emergencies into the VTS committee 2022 to 2026 working program, so we can to provide references on and basis for effectively planning the role of VTS in response to all the public health emergencies on a global scale. Finally, I want to say that we all live in a global village, and human society is an interdependent community. The COVID-19 pandemic has posed a threat to the public health security of all countries and posing new challenges to the international public health security. It is difficult for one country to effectively prevent and control the pandemic on its own. It requires international cooperation and collective response within the framework of international law and conventions. No individual, institution, organization, or country can stay out of the situation. Ships and crew members have a deep connection with international public health safety. In the era of globalization, their status is becoming more and more important, and their health interests need more attention. So as the airline's main value says, successful voyages, sustainable planet. In the final of my presentation, I want to say successful cooperation, sustainable future. That's all my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Liu Wei. Thank you very much for this interesting presentation and wise words. And thank you also for mentioning the motto of Ayala and playing ball with that. We have a couple of questions come up, now the VTS as a working environment includes many people working in shifts, and you have to change crews every now and then. I don't know how many hours they work actually in your case, but the question is, how did you organize the shift handover procedure, avoiding possible contamination between the VTS operators as they share the same work desk all the time? You have to unmute, Liu Wei. This is a question for you. Unmute, please. We may have lost him. Do we have anybody else from VTS that might want to shed light on how this is being done, actually? Anybody from a VTS environment?
Omar, good morning to all. Well, I was a former VTS operator, and listening to the story of the presentation and considering how we handed over the shift operationally, I can imagine it's quite difficult because you actually have one workstation, a person is working there for a few hours, and you literally have to hand over the watch at that same station. So you have to try to keep distance, but on the other hand, you have to talk to each other. You use the same screen, the same mouse, the same keyboard. So I think they really had to consider this very well and disinfect the station every time. But on the other hand, the ships will not wait. They will not stop for 5 minutes until your desk has been disinfected. So it could lead to certain dangers at such a moment. And I even think that in the future, if a pandemic would be something that stays in our life, that the VTS operational procedures may change in due time to mitigate these kind of risks. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, any other inputs on this topic from anybody? I see no hands or nothing. So there's another question which is kind of the same. There's a hand, but another. Okay, let's go to Francis Zachariah, the Secretary General of Ayala, who has a comment.
Thank you very much, Omar. No, I would just like to, first of all, thank you very much for two excellent presentations. They were really inspiring and fantastic. Thank you so much. I would just like to go back to the future, because we know this pandemic will end. The world has experienced many pandemics throughout the time, and of course it will end, and the situation will come back to something. And what will that something be, Chris? I'm thinking about the management of our businesses. That's something we think about in Ayala now, and I'm sure that we will never come back to the situation we had before the pandemic, management-wise. I heard you put several things in place. You punch in system, and you said, that was your words, you have implemented a system that's built on trust. And I think that's the same here in France for the working at home situation. That was not very usual before the pandemic. I think maybe employers mistrusted their employees, and you were cheating a little bit if you're working from home. But this pandemic has showed that working from home is actually very, very efficient, and people work much more than they should probably from home. So to both of you, what will change management-wise in the future? We will never come back to the same system as before. So what will you change, Chris, in your business? Will you trust the employees more?
Yeah, I think so, and I think some of those things that you just talked to, Francis, won't be put back on. You know, once you remove certain processes and certain things, some individuals enjoy working from home, and we've had requests for it to become permanent. So I think, you know, that will change. I think travel is the number one that will change. The efficiency that's come about Zoom meetings and conference calls and things like that, that just won't change. I can't see a world that we go back to. I can see a spike. I can see when the borders are open, everybody will want to go and have face-to-face meetings. But at the same time, I can see the economic sense that the longer this continues, the more business just starts to take for granted the cost savings that come about travel efficiencies. And it is far more efficient, notwithstanding time zones. The other thing that I think would change, or maybe I'm just wishful thinking, is just loyalty, team loyalty. You know, we've experienced this very transient workforce at times, where we've got a lot of good long-term employees, but then there's also a number of staff that short-term and looking for new opportunities, and particularly some of the younger team members that have come in and come out. I think with sort of a hard reset like this and such an event, if managed well from an organisation, can actually bring a team together tighter. When you go through a crisis, there's nothing like a crisis to bond teams. And then I think the shock of the environment and unemployment and the recession that many people have never seen in their lives, that might just reset the relationship between employer and employee.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this answer and the question. Quite interesting, because we have changed already in our mindset. We are thinking differently, and certainly the tolerance, or if you will, the barriers for remote working have changed. We will use that much more in the future, I think. But we have a couple of questions still.
Omar?
Yes.
Omar, I'm back. I'm sorry.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, the computer has some problem.
Yes, I know. Now you're back, then, and therefore I will pose a couple of questions to you.
Okay.
The first question was about let me see, the possibility that you get the virus inside your VTS and that the whole group of operators will be infected. What have you done to prevent that, if anything, in your VTS center?
Okay, I think we mainly to cope with the inner safety of the VTS center, to aware from the COVID-19 from three aspects. The first aspect is every operator supervisor in the VTS, they have to highly focus on their self, the self safety, to fully obey the regulations, such as the wearing mask, washing hands, keep social distance, and this is from the personal side. The second aspect is that in the VTS, we also to focus on, for example, the accommodation and the VTS hall. We will do the cleaning to the best. We will try to kill the virus in the VTS microphone or the equipment. We will clean it 4 times every day. And thirdly, from the management side aspect, we will change our shift to a much longer. For example, 7 or 40 days. You just stay in the VTS center, and other people stay at home. And after a long period, it may prove that you are safe. You can go to the VTS center to carry out your duties. That's our main measures. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's quite interesting and well done. Another question for you, Liu, was thank you for an interesting presentation. This is from the chairman of the VTS committee, Monica, in Sweden. I have a question. She says, normally VTS focuses on the movement of vessels and navigational safety in the VTS area. In your presentation, you also propose that VTS should take active part in the shore activities, such as cargo clearance and crew change. Why would VTS shift focus to the shore side, and would that not affect the monitoring of the VTS area? Leo, what do you have to say in your defense?
Okay, thank you, Monica. Thank you for your kind question. It's very interesting. And I want to say, actually, maybe the organization of the VTS is different in different countries. Because in China, in China MSC, in many branch of China MSC, the VTS and the MRCC and also the command center, they are the same department. We work together, and so the information processing is very efficient in our department. We have a different group of personnel. Some are VTS operators, and others are maybe the VTS manager, and also some personnel. They are focuses on the information processing, and also have the responsibility of search and rescue. So we work together. So we just handling other information. For example, in Monica's question, we carry out to help to facilitate the crew changes or cargo clearance. But then that's not me. We are not focused on the monitoring the daily work. There are two groups of people. We work together. And secondly is that actually the other activities such as the crew changes or the cargo clearance is not they are not our main task. We just provide assistance. We provide information. We provide we just play the role of as I have said, as a band of shore and ship, because sometimes especially when the vessel maybe still far away from the port, they cannot contact the port, but the VTS can. It's our advantages. So that's my answer. Are you happy, Monica? Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for this comprehensive answer, and it's quite interesting to hear. Obviously, these things are organized differently in different countries, and in China, you seem to have a holistic approach to this to this problem of ships entering your area, and we could talk about kind of a single window approach there. Which is quite good, very impressive. We have spent 1 hour now on this. I have one final question to you, Liu Wei, because China is a big nation with a lot of production and certainly a lot of maritime traffic, transporting goods to and from your country. And it could be interesting to know, because you must be aware of the statistics in your VTS center in Shanghai. Can you tell us anything about the volume of traffic, how it has changed during the pandemic?
Okay, actually, in our country, it's about in March. It's the high point of the pandemic. The volume of the traffic decreased about maybe in my VTS area about maybe 30%, maybe 30%, but about 1 or about 2. I mean, in the end of April, the traffic volume is recovered. Was recovered to normal. So it's only lasted for about less than 2 months. Until now, the volume may be a little bigger than before.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, that's a very interesting piece of information, this one. Okay, thank you very much. I think we will now move to closing the event.
Thank you,
please, yes, thank you very much. Please mute your microphones. I can hear some echo. So I of course want to thank the presenters, Chris Proctor and Liu Wei, for their excellent presentations and some good questions as well. From my point of view, this has been an excellent session and quite interesting. The two points of view: the AtoN navigation manufacturer that has to cope with their workforce, as well as production, or no, the logistics of getting goods in to keep the production going, and also from the perspective of a VTS center and the competent authority there on how to deal with the situation and take responsibility. I also want to thank the participants for your taking interest in this topic, and I hope that you will join the second session, which will take place at 1600 UTC, which is in about 8 hours. At that session, Mr. Dave Leavell from the US Coast Guard will give a presentation from the perspective of an AtoN navigation competent authority. It will be shorter, only one presentation, and if you cannot make the time zone, it will be recorded and will be available on the Ayala YouTube channel, as well as this part of the webinar, which will be ready in a few hours for your colleagues to see if they are interested. Now those that have missed the time slot. Now, I would like to ask you to note that we also have scheduled a webinar on safety of navigation and delivery of AtoN navigation services for French-speaking countries in Africa. This will take place the coming Tuesday, the 3rd of November. There are more webinars to come. And please keep an eye on our website, where we will post everything there is to know about these webinars. What is left for me to do is to thank you all and say goodbye and see you next time. Thank you. The webinar is closed.